Hey everybody, it's your pal Drew Dracy. I got another episode of Comics from My Spinner Rack. Well, here we go, right into it. Killdozer. I've seen this ad in the past when I'd get back issues. I didn't really buy comics until they're 25 cents, so that always tells me that it was before my time. But when I would get back issues, you know, scattered ones, usually discarded by older relatives, who, like older cousins, older, other people who just say, I outgrew comics. And believe it or not, that was a pretty common thing back then. Comics were still considered for kids, except for the secret ones, the secret fans like me who knew otherwise. But that's also why you got the, they don't have it on here, but a lot of times on the back of the cover they would say, haven't finished high school yet? And wow, it might as well just tell you, are you an idiot for thumbing through this periodical, you subliterate moron? Well, so anyway, nonetheless. So you kept that shit in the closet. Let me tell you, I say this all the time. I was a kid of the 70s. You did not tell anybody you read comic books. That was not cool. That was baby stuff. That was kid stuff. And it was, you just kept that literally in the closet. In fact, my first girlfriend, I hid my comics literally in the closet. And it's so weird because you had Kevin Smith, and you got the big bag, now you got all these comic book related terms are now everyday words. People don't. I have a cousin Sammy who knows what cosplay is, and he's a gardener, and he's like 10 years older than I am. So it's a whole different thing. So I didn't find this because I hadn't really been there. I hadn't been to Ide's Comics yet. The Ide's Comic Shop in Pittsburgh started around 1972, and I didn't find it until 75 or 76. Me and my cousin Sean would walk this long stretch of train tracks back when you could do that. Our mothers would get together with our Aunt Pidge, and they would have cigarettes and coffee on Saturdays, and me and Sean would walk these long train tracks, and we'd get to this little Ide's shop, which was in Etna, PA, and it was on a real dangerous corner too. It was like no sidewalk. You had to kind of walk on the grass, a tiny bit of curb, for like a almost 90-degree turn, and you get to the store. And it was the very first store, but then they've changed several times. Now they're downtown. Every time I go up to Pittsburgh, gotta get me some Ide's Comics because they got everything. And so I got this for like $1 not too long ago. And at the time, when Conan became this runaway success, Roy Thomas kind of spearheaded doing a lot of adaptations from other media, specifically like novels and science fiction, stuff like that. So this is from Theodore Sturgeon, and the adaptation is by Jerry Conway, which is interesting because usually it's Roy or it's Gary Friedrich. But Dick Ayers is the penciler, and Ernie Chan is the inker. He originally was Chua, I don't know how you pronounce it, Hua, and for whatever reason he changed it to Chan. So that helps a lot because at this stage, Dick Ayers really was his stuff was really going sour, and I hate to say that about a legendary Marvel career, but you see a lot of his stuff at this period, and he was good doing layouts for Sergeant Fury, which John Severn would just jazz it up, and he was a finisher. He would really make these things sing. Make these things sing. So, Killdozer, the logo's even kind of, it's funny because Artie Semick, he's like one of the greatest letterers of all time. He did so many books in the 60s and the 70s, and it was unmistakable, but I don't know, that looks like a logo somebody in production felt like throwing in there. Maybe they didn't have one ready or something, but like even that, just use that with the shaky, but that chances are that was done last as well. Things were really crazy. Marvel was expanding, and you had a lot of new kids on the block who didn't know exactly or the seriousness of production. They were more into the art, which is great. I agree with that 100%. It's just that if you're going to be publishing monthly periodicals, you kind of have to, straddle the two worlds of commerce and art, and that's just how comics are generally. At least for the longest time they were. So we're seeing a flashback to this one planet that got destroyed. They found this one mineral, the citizens of the world, and they decided to fight over it and have basically a world war where the world goes down in flames. Nothing escaped it. Nothing that we know of as life. And nothing of that strange electronic pseudo-life. Save one hardy mutant. So this mutant gaseous form, la 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 la, travels the skies and ends up on the planet Earth. But we don't see it right away. In the meantime, we're in, let me see. They're on an island and they're building a ramp for a airport. Just scares me, Tom. Just us and those tractors and a contract to build an Air Force strip. No punch clocks, no bosses, just a job. Gonna be good, Chubb. You see, we got time to run that tractor up that bluff before dark. Don't see why not. Hey, Rivera, how's that D7? You got the grease all over her? So they going about their business, but the one guy's just, I don't know what his problem is. He feels like he's a guinea pig because it's only 7 of them on this island for 3 weeks. You know, like it's, I don't know. Like the Island of Lost Loves or something like that. And it's like unnecessarily geared up. I'm sure in the novel there's a reason why this guy has this bug up his ass. I mean, you don't sign up for something for 3 weeks that as momentous and then bitch as soon as you get there. So she's a hunk of machine, hunk of operator too for a mechanic. Riviera's a good guy, yeah. And Torture Medusa, alone together against the sinister snow monsters of FF-145. Man, when I used to draw my own comics as a kid, I did all that stuff at the bottom. I would make up like stories from other books that I hadn't drawn, and it's really interesting because Dick Ayers, he gives us the basics, but the inking on this second panel here is really sweet. I mean, it's Ernie's really elevating it. Because the other stuff that was done at the Living Colossus, which was done by Ayers, woo, it just is very kind of, it's just not that great. So, anyway, let's see. Well, those must be the ruins they told us about. They need all the stone for the runway, so press on. And we don't have all day. So you see those ruins have like mystic, scientific, all kinds of ick powers. Throttling down, Riviera lowers the blade on the massive D7 and moves in. And something's off. Yeah, I feel it too, like a blast of icy air. It must be some thermal current. Yeah, off the ocean, that's it. Don't let it stop you. So, go, amigo, go! How Marvel a panel is that? A guy getting in a Marvel stance while telling somebody, just run your bulldozer. And I don't know why, that just cracks me up. It's a little over the top. A lot of these books that they, I don't say, you know, they adapt, they're cold science fiction kind of stories that have a real edge to it. And at this time, Marvel still did a lot of ambient light, and there wasn't a lot of dramatic lighting per se. So based on the imagery, this page is great here. It's something moves out of the black hole where a rock has been, and then like a fog, but not a fog that can be seen, something huge that cannot be measured. But when the fog comes, a gust of cold, which is not cold, and a smell of ozone, and a prickly crackle I knew I was going to blow it, and a prickly crackle of a mighty static discharge. For a time, nothing happens. And then Riviera gets, it's like a bucking bronco. He gets thrown off of the bulldozer, runs over him, it killed Riviera. Now it's going to kill me. And so this main guy, he tries to take it down. He tries to pull all the transmission wires, and he gets electrocuted, and it goes on a rampage. So, a little fool deserved getting killed. Wait a second. Mister, I hope I didn't hear that, because if you did, you're going to be mighty sorry. Riviera was... Say, Tom, didn't you say you left that D7 dead? Must have been mistaken. She was revving like a bronc when me and Kelly was up here and had to shut her down before the engine froze up. That's impossible. I tore out the transmission. She's dead, blasted. Still and all, blah, blah, blah. You sure you stopped her? calling bulldozers like, women's names is always kind of funny. I don't know why. I guess it goes back to like ships, back in the days of the pirates. She was a mighty ship. So, anyway, these accidents continue to happen, and this crazy ass bulldozer he just does what he wants, or she, excuse me. So, and it becomes sort of like this would be much better. It says on TV. Maybe the TV movie was more exciting. The staging is decent. It's just hard to, even with like this suggested nighttime, it's not dramatic enough. And I don't know if they were still gun shy of the Comics Code Authority, which only recently had been loosened up. And there's some redraws on these faces too. You can definitely tell that. Going back to, give me a second. Going back to that, that is not a Dick Ayers face, and that's not an Ernie Chan face. That's either, I think that might be a Jim Starlin face, because he started off in production department and helped out John Romita, and the face doesn't even look like Ernie Chan. It looks more like Frank McLaughlin. So that's the thing about the Bronze Age is you could just show up and they'd say, "Hey, help us out on a page" or whatever, and and it struck me as fun. It was just kind of the cool thing to like see new artwork before it comes out. I've always liked that. Well, here it comes. And also, Killdozer doesn't have the jagged. He doesn't look anything like the eyes. I understand, but that's super badass. And this is just a conventional bulldozer, but it's neat. So, okay, come on, focus. This newsprint's kind of yellow, so it's going to need a lot of focus. There we go. That's a nice pose. That's a very Dick Ayers pose from like the Sergeant Fury days. So I'm not going to spoil it, but it's okay. I just remember all those. I mean, it's been decades since I saw it, and I finally got it, and I was like, hey. Whoa! Whoa! I knocked over my antacid tablets. Sometimes my tum-tum acts up. Okay, Thunder Agents. I got this out of the $1 box. This is great. Oh, no, I paid $5 for it. I'm sorry. Thunder Agents. I'm going to do a whole episode on Thunder Agents very soon. It was Wally Wood's publishing company. He didn't own it, but he was the art director and designer, and he created most of the characters. And it's great fun. It's great fun. So I found this for $5. This is 1968. Double size, it's, even with they call this a spine roll, even though it's not a spine, it was just printed wrong. It should have been on the spine. So you got Gil Kane there, baby. And we start off, it's all reprint at this point. The first year or so the first 10, 12 issues were all new stuff, and then a combination of the economy and paper costs started going up, plus there was just a glut of books that came out in wake of the Batman 1966 show. So after a while, I guess the powers that be, the money people, couldn't afford to keep publishing this. So at least buying new artwork. So they got this. They have Wally Wood stuff with Dynamo. It's such a simple costume, but it's incredibly charming though. And the stories are like that one. Now, if I just weigh enough. Boom! That's beautiful. I love that. Wally Wood, at this point in his career, he puts in so few lines when he's rendering, but every one of them counts. Like, you got these 3 panels, and you got 1, 2 follow-up panels that are just perfect. Really enjoyable stuff. A lot of times he tended to draw mid-range images. He didn't do a lot of foreshortening like the Marvel guys did, and that wasn't necessarily Wood's thing anyway. His was more illustrative than punch in the face. And here's another member, Lightning. He's like the Flash, but the more he uses his power, he starts to age. That became a thing later on. There was a character called, I think, Thunderbolt or something like that in issue of Power Man Iron Fist, and he was I don't want to say anti-hero. He was a hero, but he was one of those mistaken heroes that people thought he was a criminal, but he wasn't. So he had the same thing happen. He would grow old the more he uses because of his metabolism. And that's been used like several times since, and I can't think where exactly. You could sort of say maybe, God, I hate saying Spawn in the same sentence as, Thunder Agents, but Spawn, I think, the more he used his power, he would get closer to death, but he wouldn't necessarily age. At least it wasn't explained that way. And I'm sorry, Spawn fans. I know I'm being a dick. I just, it's just not my thing. And if I'm uncool, I'm uncool. So, I think this art is by Mike Sikowski. Not sure. We got some more, now we get Ditko. Steve Ditko, inked by Wally Wood. They would work together quite a few times. They worked on a book called Stalker that came out from DC for only 4 issues in 75 or 76. And they also worked on 4 issues of Destructor for Atlas Comics. That's it. The revived one that failed. So... And we get to Gil Kane, baby. Writing and drawing, I believe. I could be wrong. The main writer of this series was called Len Brown, and that was actually the name they gave to Dynamo. But I'll cover that later. But how about that? Kane doing Kirby. I love seeing it. Like Stranko when he does Kirby, and then you got Kane doing it. It's elaborate, but they just have different sensibilities, but both very unique. Very unique. God, it's gorgeous stuff. And this is The Fist of Zeus. This is by Tuska. Kind of pedestrian. I'm a Tuska fan, but the stories, his stuff wasn't jazzy enough to do simple stories like this. He needed more elaborate plot lines that he would get in the big two. Because Thunder Agents, the whole Tower series, it was very basic. You didn't have like tons of heroes with tons of problems like you had at Marvel. Superheroes with super problems, and then DC would have people that would be a little too unrelatable, in my opinion. Like used to be Wonder Woman and Superman, because they were, and most of the other Justice League were just perfect people. They were just so fun stuff, really fun stuff. So speaking of Justice League, issue 27, I had covered Batman and Outsiders #1 some time ago. He had quit the Justice League because they were busy with international or out-of-space problems, mostly out-of-space problems and aliens and such, and they weren't doing enough on the ground. And so Batman comprised a team of... he quit the Justice League outright, turned in his membership and everything, and he got together with Black Lightning, Geoforce, and there were some new ones, Katana and Halo, and it was a pretty good book. And Jim Aparo did like the first 2 years, and then he went back to doing the Batman series. And then Alan Davis, a very young Alan Davis, who was already spectacular, took over. You can tell right away, War Stars, they're trying to make a pun on Star Wars. That's to do with the Star Wars problem. Blech. See, I talk too fast. It's a pun on the Star Wars program that President Reagan had mentioned, and it didn't really exist. He did it more to psych out the Soviet Union, to have them outspend us on weapons, and it's interesting stuff. But so it's War Stars, I have to tell myself, and man, John Workman, you can tell that's his lettering right away. Ugh. And we're doomed, Lord Cobra. We will all die. But what happens? Cobra took command of the of our missiles, and he was going to send them to the Soviet Union, causing World War III. But they got destroyed. You saved us, nah. He goes, yes. What I find is disturbing is your lack of faith. So that was the first batch of missiles. There's more to be coming. But I love this. Batman needs to get to that satellite that Cobra has. I said, give me General Harrison. Where is he? Listen to me. Stop. I'm Batman. He's unavailable at the present, sir. This line is unauthorized. I can't. Listen to me, this is Batman. I can stop Cobra, but I'll need a shuttle. Have it in just a moment, sir. You check voice in right now. And it says, recent acts. Quit Justice League of America. Fought 4th of July. U.S. agents. Current status. Politically incorrect. I'm sorry, sir. But you're no longer authorized to commandeer U.S. government property. They gave me the president. He's still sleeping. It's just wacky shit. Wacky shit. There's a subplot there that too long to go into. But I mean, right there, good lord. It's like Alan Davis. Man, he just started off as a... I love Metamorpho's face in the clouds. He turns himself into some kind of gas. Walks out the bad guys. There's Katana, great character. This is a free insert mask. It's by Michael Fleischer, pencil by Mike Chen, who I have no idea who that is. And then inked by Joe Del Beato, which I only know Joe Delbo, so maybe he changed his name to full name. I don't know. So, but I'm not that interested in that. But some people do. It was like a toy line, comic, and something like that. So, the gang's all here. Oh yeah, that too. That little thing, Christ on Infinite Earths. That Geoforce at the top right is a little suspect, but... once in a while, he would sneak in a smile for Batman. And he and Cobra are really going at it. Cobra's no wuss. He's not some, like, Hydra head who sits fat and happy behind his big green smock. So, really good stuff. Little nuanced faces. I love that. Just... wow. Love it, love it, love it. Okay, on to Ka-Zar. Ka-Zar, actually. People always say Ka-Zar. I always screw up. But, I don't know. I bought this book when it came out, and here's the thing. About this time, this is, the dreaded, you're like 6 months into the new price tag. So it's the last issue. I think all September issues started with 30 cents over 25 cents. And so you can only buy 3 books a month, and if you for $1. Love this cover by Gil Kane and Dan Adkins. You know, they were killing it. They dragged so many readers into books they might not otherwise read. Like I was a sucker for that. I'd buy books. It turns out I didn't like this book, but I loved Gil Kane's cover, and I love this guy. I didn't know who he was. I hadn't seen him in Fantastic Four, I don't think. But like, you know, when I was a kid, it had to be splashy superhero costume. You know, no Ka-Zar, no Conan, no, just, I don't know why, it was just had to be superhero. And, but I picked this up because the other books that I had already, that were already on the stands, I already had. And I was put off by it, but you know what? Many years pass, and I grow to love this stuff. I was just very narrow-minded in my my interest in comics. But Doug Mensch and Val Mayerick, who are the writer, artist, and Ernie Chan this time is the inker. Val Mayerick was penciling and inking his own stuff for quite a while, and then this last issue, along came Ernie, and it's a very interesting mix. Some parts it seems very close, and then some parts like that doesn't. I don't know if that works. A combination there. And one thing, I love Doug Mensch, but there's a little too much of this going on. But to make the story short, Ka-Zar has to fight not only a supervillain, Claw, but he has to fight barbarians, and he has to fight aliens. So, like, Val does amazing stuff, but this is clearly a big, heavy document dump. So how do you make that interesting? And it's almost impossible. It's just sort of there. One thing I do find interesting is Claw actually has irises on his eyes. Usually he just has white eyes. So it's neat. It's just that you're not getting like that top panel there looks more Mayeric. Ooh, yeah, right. Wow, how about that? I don't know when that came out. Okay, Peter Bueno Gillis writes a letter in. Oh, okay. Best part. Okay, so all this is going on. It's crazy, crazy shit. And it's as you could tell, it wasn't new reader friendly, but this is the last issue, so it's not only are you brought in something you don't understand. It's like we're still not going to tell you. To be continued somewhere. See letters page for explanation. I should have like a what do you call if they made a drinking game of like Bronze Age books, and that would be one of the points where you imbibe. So this is the last issue of Ka-Zar to be published in the foreseeable future, and believe me, no one regrets it. Wait, and believe us, people, no one regrets it more than Doug Mensch and Val Mayeric. Doug and Val have both been working hard in the adventures of our jungle lord, putting in a lot of effort to make Ka-Zar one of the best books around. Doug and Val, we love ya. However, circumstances dictate Kevin Lord Plunder hop up on the old Marvel shelf for a while. You see, we got Everloving Bullpen is so on the verge of... Let me say this again. You see, your Everloving Bullpen is on the verge of embarking on a project so big, so fantastic, so Marvel that even Smiling Stan is walking on air. We can't say any more at the time, but keep watching them bullpen bulletins, because when the word comes, we're going to knock you out of your tree. Let's just say you haven't seen the last of Jungle Comics and Marvel. On to the letters. So you'll have to excuse me, my sinuses are, making me... it's so funny how that's like supposed to satisfy the reader. And it was I only realized after doing a little research that this was continued in X-Men, Uncanny X-Men, excuse me, number 111, when he showed up with, and Sauron showed up, all that. So they did finish some plot points there. Although I don't remember them finishing any of Ka-Zar's plot points at the time. But what do I know? I don't know. Star Reach Classics. This cover right away grabbed me because the book came out the same exact year that Alien Legion came out by Epic Comics, and Frank Chirocco, he was the artist, and he did this cover. So you got Jim Starlin, you got Dave Sim, and you got Neil Adams and Frank Chirocco, and you can't ignore that. This is a nice back to paper. Some little kids being told about death. The origin of death. I love that panel there. So it goes on and on and on. It strays a little bit from like biblical teachings, because it doesn't have just Adam and Eve and the apple. It had all these mutants show up, and then later on all this other stuff happened. Death. I ain't gonna read the whole thing for you, but so what happened is this kid, this kid passes on, and it was like death kind of taking him to the beyond. Kind of like the death of Captain Marvel, but much different. And kind of like the boy who collected Spider-Man, but also very different. So, in fact, I even doubt that DeFalco or friends even knew of this story, because it was published by Star Reach, which was a small indie publisher. Mike Friedrich, who wrote Iron Man for a few years, he became probably like one of the main... he started creator rights in comics form in a big way, like getting big names, not just up-and-comers or people who come and go and can't pull their weight. It's like Neil Adams was doing creative rights on the side of like Siegel and Schuster and other people in art returns, and as well as creator-owned stuff. But Neil didn't really put his toe into the creator-owned stuff until the '80s. But Mike Friedrich, he was like, "Come on over, I'll publish your stuff. You'll own it, and you could always reprint it elsewhere if you want to sell it to somebody else. You still own the story and the art." Like this, The Origin of God. Starlet 1979? Excuse me a second. Oh, 74. Bloop. There he is. Some early Dave Sim. It says 1978. Colors by Michael T. Gilbert of Mr. Monster fame. Now, this came out about a year after Cerebus #1 came out, but I get the feeling that this was done years prior, and maybe he finally had the opportunity to hook up with Mike Friedrich, and it's an okay story. And then there's Flightmare. The story's by Neil Adams, and the art's by Frank Chirocco, who was also in the huge studio called Continuity Comics, or what was it called? Anyway, it was a... Excuse me, I got a hiccup. Excuse me. It was a studio, so he kind of has a little bit of a Neil Adams flair to it. Yeah, he's flying. Yeah, Saberjet. She's a fast old girl, so he's kind of flashing back. Still too fast to enjoy the ride. So in his mind, he's going back to the early eras. He goes, all right, the old P-51 Mustang. There was nothing in the sky that could match her. And I still feel sorry about technology. So he ends up in a biplane. This is almost perfect. And it turns out to be this flying woman is like the next step. Ooh, so funny. However, Jesus, what's that? Bogey at 4 o'clock. And it turns out to be the woman he was next to. Hello, Captain. That bitch, I'm going to get her for the last thing I do. And she's like, gotcha. It's funny stuff. It's funny in a way that it isn't intended to be. It's just very 70s. You always got to show a topless gal. Gotcha. Well, it turns out he was wrong. Gotcha. So it's sort of a story. It's not much, but this page alone, I love the facial expressions. I love that. I guarantee you Neil laid that out for him because that's such a Neil face. Or at this point, Frank already knew enough Neil-isms to put in there. But I love that. I love that last page. So it's kind of pointless but fun at the same time. So there are other reprints. This is a reprint of the earlier Star Reach books that came out around 1975, I think. And a lot of big talent were on. Got on them. Howard Chaykin. The next issue has Mike Friedrich and Dick Giordano, Sergio Aragones, Steve Lee Aloha, and also P. Craig Russell and others show up. So that's really cool. Zot. So it's Eclipse Comics, just another one of the great batch of books that came out. The Bronze Age was really fascinating. They took more chances, and so anyway, let me know what you think. Have you read any of these issues? Do you like Thunder Agents, First Exposure, Batman Outsiders, Ka-Zar, continued stories that go on, indie books, or indie creators, mainstream creators that became indie creators? So let me know what you think. Just share anything you want. Just tell me if you think I'm full of crap. You can... I don't know. But I'd love to read comments. I really love it because it gives me a feeling of community. It's just that it's neat to hear other people's experience because everybody reads and ingests entertainment in different manner, and I think I always get a kick out of reading what people have to write. So please also click like and subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. And please double check because there's been a lot of much bigger channels than mine have been. Had their subscribers not received any notifications And in some cases, they say, well, unsubscribe and then resubscribe and then re-hit the bell for notifications just to make sure you're still getting them. It's just a YouTube thing. Big pain in the ass. So, anyway, I gotta go take some allergy medicine because I'm talking like this. I sound like a moron. All right, everybody. Have a good week. It's going to be the first work week of 2026. Woohoo! Take care, everybody. Love you.